Everyone, how are we doing? Welcome to day 2 of the Biddle Hub, I believe. Today, this morning, we have a quick 25-minute presentation and some fun new tools to share with you as well. Hot off the presses, Endaoment has just launched new primitives for developers to be able to integrate on-chain programmable philanthropy directly into any application or website or portfolio tracker, NFT platform, protocol, you name it. We've tried to build a tool that helps you to incorporate impact into what you're building. A little bit about what we'll cover today, and then I'll dive into intros and a little bit of setup information. So first off, Endao what? Most people haven't yet heard about Endaoment, and that's all good. But we'll spend some time making sure we're all running on the same set of information, that you guys know a little bit more about what Endaoment is. And then we'll dive into these 3 new tools, what they mean, what we've built for them, the documentation and resources that you can have as developers to be able to integrate impact directly into your app. So first things first, let's get clear about what Endaoment is. First off, hi. I'm Robbie. Nice to meet you all. I am the president and CEO of Endaoment, and Endaoment is crypto's community foundation. We launched in 2020. We are a 501c3, tax-exempt, public charity, and community foundation based out of California. What do all of those terms mean? First off, a 501c3 means that we are certified by the IRS as a tax-exempt organization. Every dollar that we take in at Endaoment is tax-exempt to the fullest extent of the law. A public charity is a certain kind of 501c3. A public charity has to have a majority of its fundraising come from people unaffiliated with the nonprofit. So they have to pass a public charity test in which the IRS looks back over your contributions and determines whether or not you are actually in the public interest versus in the interest of a very small group of people. And this allows us to offer a broader range of philanthropic financial services. We offer 2 main kinds of philanthropic financial services. Those are donor-advised funds. Donor-advised funds are like individual little charitable foundations that anybody can stand up. And the other type of fund that we offer is a community fund. A community fund is also known as a field of interest fund. It's when you identify a field of interest or a group of people who are going to work together to determine what kinds of causes that they'd like to support. And the last type of fund that we support is called a individual beneficiary fund, or a single recipient fund, in which the only recipient of that fund is one specific organization, as long as they exist in good standing with the IRS. And now, those are important to understand how we've built this architecture for facilitating on-chain charitable donations. But before we go any further, what has this meant for the crypto community? Well, it's meant an incredible outlet for people to give. To date, we've raised almost $52 million in charitable donations from users all across the Ethereum and crypto landscape. So shout out to you guys. Congratulations on what is a really remarkable amount of impact. And thank you for all of the giving that you've done already to date. That's happened across about 1,200 different donation events. Those 1,200 different donation events, though, don't include individual NFT mints. One of the things that we've seen huge amounts of traction on are around NFT-based fundraisers. And those take thousands and thousands of mint opportunities and combine them into one bulk donation. And so we assume, if we count those micro donations, we have sort of an internal count that's well into the sort of 5 figures of individual donation events. And with these developer tools, we're really excited to see that number rise. We're going to start counting those micro donations as individual donations, and that's just going to be more reflective of the kinds of philanthropic activity that's happening across the crypto landscape. We've onboarded about 2,600 nonprofits and have several hundred donor-advised funds or community field of interest funds for a total of around 2,900 contract addresses on chain that can be used as charitable endpoints, tax-exempt endpoints for contributing capital to causes that you care about. And that's led to around 700, 800 individual grants to individual nonprofits, granting out over $31 million to date to nonprofits. So this is a very real very live system running on mainnet. We're now on V2 of our interface. We've built this comprehensive donation interface that marries our protocol. Our protocol is the smart contract suite that manages all of these different contract addresses. This includes the organization single beneficiary funds, as well as the community funds and private donor advised funds. But our web app is really meant to line up with our on-chain protocol to give people a beautiful interface to interact with these contract addresses. And so if you go to endaoment.org, click on Launch App and find an organization that you love, you'll see that once they're deployed, they'll have a smart contract address. Each nonprofit has their own destination smart contract address. And with Endaoment V2, that destination smart contract address is entirely composable. So you can think of it almost like an EOA for that nonprofit. And we'll take care of the liquidation into stablecoins, hooking up with the nonprofit to get their payment method of preference, and wiring them or passing them the stablecoins over to their own individual wallet or to their bank account without you, the donor, having to figure out any of those logistics. And deploying new contract addresses is entirely trustless. So if you have organizations that you love, you can just search for them on Endaoment, or as we'll see here in a minute, using our developer tools, you can find that organization and deploy their smart contract address without anybody giving you permission to do so. And that will help us onboard that charity into the crypto ecosystem. So what are these 3 new tools that we're rolling out here? Well, just last week, we announced the Endaoment Developers Program. And the Endaoment Developers Program consists of 3 main utilities for developers to help incorporate impact directly into your app or website. First, and probably most straightforward, is the SDK. SDK is here to enable you to, with a few short lines of code, integrate the capacity to format transactions that are ultimately tax-exempt donations straight into your protocol or application. We've also taken all of the feature sets of the SDK and boiled them down into a public, free, totally open, accessible API endpoint. Feel free to go ahead and get after it, and if we feel like you're doing too many calls, we'll let you know. It's really there for you to use. We really want to see people come in, and if you have a more customizable interface or infrastructure where you're looking to, take an app that you've already built that has robust Axios connections or, existing API infrastructure, and you already have all the tools to sort of format up transactions and do gas estimation and all of that fun stuff, you can use the API instead of the SDK, but the SDK is really there to be the one-liner, easy approach. Let us take on the hard stuff for you of figuring out the swap route and gas estimation, contract addresses, all that fun stuff. Lastly, we would be nowhere without our commitment to decentralization. And so it was really important to us at Endaoment to launch a subgraph in conjunction with these tools around app development. The subgraph is really there to help you pull statistics about philanthropic activity that's happening on chain, or to be able to audit what's happening on chain and say, did they actually move that money to that nonprofit, or are people actually giving as much as they say they're giving? What we've learned over the last year and change very painfully is that people will often make large commitments to philanthropy, but it's hard to track. It's hard to know if they've actually made that donation. And with the subgraph, we're hoping that we can bring some of that decentralized transparency more easily into the hands of users to be able to audit what's happening on the Endaoment platform and build really cool dashboards and sort of alert systems around giving that's happening inside of the Ethereum ecosystem. So we're going to take these tools one at a time, and I'll also jump out and give you a sort of modified, short, quick demo. Just watching the time, want to make sure that we're able to get through everything. But we'll show you some of the resources that we've built here for you guys to understand how to appropriately integrate the Endaoment ecosystem into your app. And yeah, I think you'll find it pretty cool. So we like to think of this SDK as an SDK for public good. We hear a lot of people working on the public goods infrastructure space and are really impressed by all the work that they're doing. And we wanted to help facilitate that by bringing this SDK to market. And what's important for everybody here to know at this developers convention is that this SDK is sort of industry class, easy to integrate, comes with JavaScript and TypeScript compatibility. It's really meant for React applications to easily be integrated straight into your component architecture. It comes with access to search over 90,000 organizations that are already in our database. That number grows every time somebody runs a search on Endaoment. We pull in more data about more nonprofits. And right now, we're sitting on over 2,500, as we talked about earlier, closer to 2,800 different contract addresses that represent either individual organizations or collective efforts to do giving as sort of a giving circle, or individuals who are doing giving that is directed just by them through their own grant recommendations. And really, this is built specifically for Web3, right? So we are formatting up gas limits, figuring out what contract addresses you're supposed to be routing things to. We effectively format the data object for transactions on your behalf to make sure that you get clean and successful transactions with the Endaoment interface. We've built a really lovely code sandbox. Ooh, good morning. We've built a really lovely code sandbox for you guys to play with and to get it comfortable with the Endaoment SDK. So you can see on the left, we're running like a very, very bare bones React application where we're importing the Endaoment SDK. Oops, let's not nuke it. Right, so we're importing the Endaoment SDK to help us format up a series of different examples. And so the three examples that I kind of want to walk you guys through that we see as the core examples of really any of these tools being utilized by a developer are discoverability of organization contract addresses, deploying organizations that are not yet deployed, so we'll take a look at that as well, and also charitable giving, which is the actual act of sending in money and us doing what we call a swap and donate, where we take in a donation, swap it for USDC, and deposit it at the end destination address that we're looking for. So first off, this is pretty straightforward. We've done some pretty gnarly styling here, but we can easily pull up UNICEF. You can see that we have several different UNICEF-related organizations already in the database, with the big one, UNICEF, already being deployed. Right, and this can either pull you out to Etherscan, where you can see this UNICEF transaction. Now, nobody yet has given to UNICEF. If anybody wants to change that, we will gladly help you out. But you could also come here and see it on Endaoment. And so all of this information is the same between Endaoment and the SDK, as well as between UNICEF and their current tax filings. So we're pulling current tax financial information about UNICEF, and you can see that you can donate easily through the app using a wallet or from a fund if you have a fund. Or you can use this new sort of composable architecture that we have to monitor and pull the contract address and just send assets straight to that contract address. And what we've built on the back end is some very cool, very robust Tenderly dashboards and automated webhooks and workflows around inbound assets to any of our smart contract addresses. If you send in assets, our system will automatically notice it. And if it meets a threshold amount, we will automatically liquidate it and deposit it into the desired contract address. But if it just sits there and it's a really small amount, we can come back and swap and reconcile. But ultimately, what is important for this group to know is that you can easily come here and build a search box for finding any nonprofit address that you want to format a donation to, and more importantly for your users to be able to say, oh, I'd like to give to this or this or this cause, and for you to know that you have a robust search engine at your disposal that you don't have to build yourself for both finding these contract addresses but also finding metadata about these nonprofits. If, for example, let's do Does anybody have a particularly favorite organization in the crowd? You got to say it louder for me. All right, I'm sure that they're deployed. They've actually... Oh, wow. Wonderful. Here's Doctors Without Borders. You can see them on Endaoment. Doctors Without Borders has actually done quite a bit of fundraising on Endaoment already, as you can see. But we do have an undeployed nonprofit here, which is Burners for Direct Action. And so Burners for Direct Action has not yet been deployed, and so it's worth understanding what's the difference between a deployed and undeployed org. Well, as you can see, Burners for Direct Action has this big blue deploy button, which means we haven't actually created a contract address for them yet. We have data about them from the government, but we don't actually have an endpoint for them. And so something that we've set up here is the ability for you, the developer, if you find an org that you would like to deploy, you can actually format that transaction for creating a deployment. So let's go back to Burners for Direct Action. If we grab their EIN, for instance, wonderful, loving that. There we go. And we put this in here, and we search without the space. There we go. You'll see here that we have Git deployment data. And what the SDK will do for you is format up this transaction object that basically takes the EIN of the organization, so the unique tax identifier for the organization gets formatted up into a contract address by using the EIN as the salt for a create to. So each contract address for Endaoment is actually unique to the EIN of that organization, which we think is really cool. It's a great way for us to verify that that organization's contract address actually represents that organization, and that there can only be one contract address for that EIN. So this would take this, you'd broadcast it into a transaction. In the interest of time, I'm not going to do that right now because we don't want to wait for the chain. But that's deploying an organization on Endaoment. So we already have 2,800 deployed, but if for some reason it's not deployed, you can easily use the SDK to format that deploy transaction, or you can come here and deploy it on the app. Same. The last thing that we'll show you from the SDK is charitable giving. So in this instance, you would give it an organization that you found through the SDK. You would give it the sort of contract address of the asset that you would like to donate and an amount that you would like to donate. And it will format up for you using the Uniswap auto router a trade pathway, as well as the necessary additional transaction data that's required to issue what we call a swap and donate. And so if this were to be broadcasted out into a transaction, right, we would basically have a 1 ETH donation, in this case to Endaoment. This is our EIN here. But again, in the interest of time, looking that we only have 6 minutes left here, I will spare us the transaction itself. But very, very cool to sort of see this running in real time. And you can imagine that you would put users through a search, select, figure out how much you want to donate, format the transaction, and it's off. And that would be all it would take for you to integrate giving directly into your app. That's the SDK, but what about the API? The API is basically the same set of features as the SDK, just bundled up in a slightly different format. And so same process where you're finding orgs, getting their contract address, or you're getting the contract address for a public fund if you want to give to sort of like a batching endpoint. Whether you make a fund for your community, or you have, we have the Turkey Syria Relief Fund right now, right? So if you know you want to support earthquake victims, but you don't want to have to choose where, you can give to a community fund instead of giving to an individual org. And then we'll format up that contract call for you. In the future, we're looking to do the end-to-end endowment experience through the API and the SDK itself, so that if you're building a portfolio tracker and you want to be able to pull in information about a user's DAF that's connected with their wallet, that you can show their charitable giving in the same place that you're showing the value of their portfolio or their ability to bridge or their farmed assets. In the same way that you would want to show that complete picture of a wallet, we want to be able to give you the ability to show the complete picture of their philanthropic history on chain as well. We also have a really nice styled up set of docs and resources for you here. This is linked to from developers.endaoment.org, but also you can just go to api.endaoment.org/OAS. And here you'll find just a little playground for you to be able to do things like getting a list of public funds, or searching through a list of those public funds, or getting a bunch of orgs, or searching for specific orgs, or deploying orgs, right? Same set of features, just a different way to plug into it depending on how you want to plug into it. We wanted that max flexibility. Last but not least, we're really excited about the Subgraph. The Subgraph is in its infancy right now. It just came out. Everything you're seeing here just came out on Thursday of last week. But for now, the Subgraph is a great aggregator of statistics about the endowment ecosystem. And just like any other subgraph, you can play with the subgraph on the playground at the Graph Network's website. So if we go to the playground here, you'll see we have a query formatted up that is giving us the top 5 Endao entities, or just 5 first Endao entities, and also the first 5 portfolio positions. So we allow people, when they're sitting on idle philanthropic capital, to invest them into a range of portfolios so that they can grow tax-free. And here you'll see that we're just pulling this data straight from the chain in order to be able to show people, who's got the most position in portfolios, or who's got, the largest donor advised fund at Endaoment, or what is the most fundraised to organization on Endaoment. All of these are really easy queries to build here using GraphQL in the Graph Network and using the Graph Playground. So we really hope that you'll jump into this playground, play around with it, but also feel free to curate. We, the team, are backing this subgraph. It's not going anywhere. We'll be supporting it over the long term and have some really exciting partnerships that we think will boost its queries. So it would encourage everyone to come and curate on the endowment subgraph as well. That's really what we wanted to come here to show you. I've got 2 minutes left for questions, but we're really, really excited about these developer tools. Our goal is to make it as easy as possible for people to integrate giving straight into the work that you're doing. We hear of so many people who have treasuries or projects or NFTs drops that they're doing that they want to split with charity. And from everything from just finding the contract address of your favorite charity to all the way through to managing the end-to-end endowment app experience in an environment that isn't the endowment app, we're really excited about the potential of these 3 new tools. I will be here all week. The team will be at the Regenlandia booth. If you want to grab any of these QR codes, I'll leave them up on the screen. We're also kicking off very shortly a developer incentivization program. So if you are interested in integrating on Endaoment and could use some support from the team, whether that's emotional and physical, or software support, or if it's financial support, we would love to have that conversation with you. So please do reach out. And this QR code will get you on an emailing list to hear more about those programs as we launch them. And thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you will all consider taking a small amount of whatever new wealth you've created and leveraging it for impact in your community. It's the best feeling in the world, especially when it's magic internet money that you're giving away. I can't stress it enough. If you haven't tried giving yet, especially if you haven't tried giving yet through Endaoment, it's a really, really lovely experience and memory that you can build for yourself, and a really great way to ground yourself into a real-world use case for crypto. So thank you for your time, thank you for your attention, and thank you for all the future impact that you'll make. We can't wait to see what you build. Any questions quickly from the crowd? I know I have 12 seconds left, but they're not looking at me, so Yes. Yeah, so if you donate through the app, you have the option to get a tax receipt. Soon, these developer tools will also support tax receipts. That's sort of like a V1. We call this V0.5 right now. This is V1 will probably have tax receipts included into it. But it's a question of PII. It's a much more security-sensitive interaction. So we do it inside of our own app where we have a lot more confidence in the sort of transfer of private information. But yes, you can get tax receipts. You can also get tax receipts after the fact. So you can make a huge donation, and as long as you can come back to us and prove that you were the one that made that donation by signing a message with that wallet, we can come back and give you a tax receipt after the fact. We also help people figure out whether they need to get the gift appraised. There are regulations in the United States about gift appraisals. And so if you're in a position where you've given a large gift and you need a tax receipt, you probably also need an appraisal. And so we help walk donors through that process, get them connected to different vendors who do appraisals. We, as the nonprofit, are not allowed to appraise the thing that we take in. Otherwise, we would appraise it for $1 trillion and, game over. So no, not that we would ever do that. But yeah, is that an answer to your question? Okay, cool. Okay, I must give up the stage. If you'd like to ask more questions, I also have some merch for everybody. If you deploy organizations, we're giving some big merch as well. So yeah, I encourage you to find your favorite nonprofits and get them deployed. And now I'll hand off the mic. It's all yours, bro. Thank you, everyone.